for a cyberspace that reflects a
Well, good morning and welcome to the latest installment of ITI's Bridge for Innovation series, an initiative that highlights the impact and importance of well-crafted technology policy. My name is Jason Oxman. I'm the president and CEO of ITI, the leading global advocate for the tech industry, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today. As the leading voice on AI and AI policy across the globe, ITI has been at the forefront of policy discussions alongside Congress, the administration, and representatives from the world's most innovative companies. Over the past few years, ITI has released a suite of policy recommendations to help lawmakers understand and to harness these transformative benefits of AI while addressing the risks and the challenges that may emerge. Now, ITI looks forward to continued collaboration alongside decision makers as they consider approaches to AI policy. In ITI's policy recommendations, we've stressed the importance of multi-stakeholder partnerships and emphasized the role of industry in developing and deploying AI solutions. Working alongside the best and the brightest innovators from the tech sector, we're hopeful that Congress and the administration can approach AI policy in a way that allows for further advancements in technology and innovation for the benefit of all. Now, we're thrilled to be joined today by Dr. Arthi Prabhakar. She's a brilliant and a highly respected engineer and applied physicist who is also the director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. Now, Director Prabhakar has a long record of service to national security. She's led NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, DARPA, the United States Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and her current role as Chief Science and Technology Advisor to the President. Director Prabhakar has become the Biden-Harris administration's leading voice on AI. She's joining us today to dive deeper into how the tech sector and the public sector are working together and can continue to work together to build trustworthy AI systems as we support innovation and investment in AI here in the United States. It was a pleasure to have the director join our inaugural policy event here in DC on stage earlier this year, the Intersect, which will be happening again in February of 2024. We're excited to have her back with us today for our virtual discussion. So welcome, Director Prabhakar.
Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me back.
Well, we appreciate you coming back, and we know that it is very early in the morning for you because you're still out in San Francisco, having joined the president yesterday at a meeting of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, or PCAST, as we call it in the industry. So I want to ask you straight up, because it's the newest news out of the AI world. Can you share with us the takeaways from yesterday's PCAST meeting and what you think we should be paying attention to?
We had a great meeting with the president yesterday. PCAST has met with him now twice, specifically on AI, and that was the bulk of the conversation yesterday as well. As we said publicly before we went into the closed session, we used that meeting with PCAST really to step back from the body of work that the Biden administration has been driving. AI has been a top priority for this president. He's really got the White House and the whole administration cranking on it. And we'll talk in this conversation about the series of steps and the work that's underway. Almost all of that is focused on how the technology operates today, the applications, and how people and companies are using it right now, the risks that come with that. And so with his Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, we wanted to give the president a chance to step back and really look at all the huge opportunities ahead. That's really why we're trying to wrestle with the risks and the problems that come with AI, because we want to seize the great power that this technology has to solve some of our hardest problems. So we talked with him about how AI helps us model extreme weather in very practical, pragmatic ways as the climate changes. We talked about the kinds of new materials that are going to be possible with properties no one's ever seen before. And we even talked about how we can understand the origins of the universe better with AI. So it's a pretty mind-blowing and fun conversation.
A lot of topics. I think the president joked in his opening remarks that it was going to be a 14-hour meeting. So definitely a lot on the agenda. The other thing I wanted to ask before we move on and talk about some of the things the administration is working on out of yesterday, the president remarked that he actually hears from world leaders asking him about what's going on with AI, what the U.S. government's approach to AI is. You've been doing this for a very long time. You're on one of your multiple tours of government, having run NIST and DARPA. Have you ever seen anything like that, where the actual, the president of the United States is talking to his counterparts and colleagues from around the world about a technology policy development at this scale?
I think that really is remarkable. I think it's happened a few other times if you think in a historical context, but I do find it remarkable. It's not remarkable to me that all of the companies that participate in ITI are embedded in AI conversations all the time. It's what you would expect, but it really speaks to the power and the breadth of this technology, that it's what world leaders talk to each other about. And it's over and over again, I think the theme that the president reflected on is countries looking to him for leadership and looking to America for leadership as these rapid changes are taking place.
So part of that leadership, of course, is the upcoming, eagerly anticipated executive order on AI, which the president noted yesterday will be coming out sometime this fall, which I think we're in fall now, so it could be imminent. Yep. Or fall runs through December, I guess, technically, before winter starts, so it could be a couple months away.
You're really parsing that carefully. I think that's
yeah, exactly. Well, when you make predictions based on seasons, that's how you have to do it. Short of telling us what day it's coming out, can you give us a high-level sense of what the administration is looking to accomplish with the EO, what we might be looking for, and what you're going to look for industry to help after that EO comes out?
Yeah, there's a lot on all of that, and we're not obviously going to talk about the EO yet, but there is a lot to say about what's behind it and what's driving it and what our approach is. So let's step back and start from basics. The number one thing is where we started, which is this president is clear that this is one of the most powerful technological forces of our time. He has reflected for the last many years that we're at a pivotal point in history, and that the choices that we make are going to shape the decades ahead in some very powerful ways. And he very much now talks about AI and sees AI as part of this landscape of this pivotal moment. And that's because this is a powerful technology, and that means people are going to use it. Every country around the world is going to use it, is actively working to use it to shape a future that reflects their own values. And that's going to look different depending on who really drives this technology in the future. And I think the one thing that we are all very clear on is none of us wants to live in a future that's shaped by technologies that have been driven by authoritarian regimes. And that's why we are at a moment where American leadership in the world requires American leadership in AI. And that is what is behind everything that you will see. And then the next step is to say, well, okay, well, how do we get this technology and its future, how do we get it on a track so that we can reap the phenomenal benefits, but in a way that manages and mitigates the risks? Because of course, any powerful technology is a raw force. All of human history says it's going to get used for good and for ill. And our job collectively as a community, anyone who works on AI, our job is to figure out how to get the good and tamp down the problems. So that means that government in particular has a couple of very important roles. One is about mitigating risks, and the other is about seizing the huge opportunities. We know the market is going to use this technology to do all kinds of amazing and useful and wonderful things. But when we come to work for all the different missions that government has, national security and every other public mission, we too need to be able to harness the power of AI. So that's those two elements, mitigating risk and then seizing these huge opportunities for public purposes, that drives everything that we do. And the work, you talked about the EO, but I'll just also that in the context of a stream of activities that this administration has just moved out on. Starting earlier this year, the president was very clear that we had to move with focus and urgency, and we are doing that. That started with this May convening of 4 AI CEOs at the White House. We had the CEOs of Microsoft, Google, OpenAI, and Anthropic. A wonderful meeting with the vice president. The president dropped by as well. And the vice president talked very directly with these companies about their need to step up, not just a legal, but a moral obligation to make sure that their products are safe before they go out into the world. That meeting then led to the voluntary commitments that you've seen from now a total of 15 companies. And I think is a great demonstration of the president's leadership. It's terrific to see the industry standing up together and agreeing on some basics about safety and security and trust. Then that's the industry doing what it needs to do. And there's a lot more there. The next step is the executive branch stepping up and doing what we need to do. And that's what the executive order is all about. It'll be broad. It really reflects everything that that the president really sees as possible under existing law to get better at managing risks and at using the technology. And then the other parts of the story, the last two pieces I'll briefly mention, is working on an international global basis because AI doesn't stop at the borders, and then continuing to work on a bipartisan basis with Congress because I think everyone's quite clear that there will be places where new legislation is required, and Congress, as you know, has been actively learning and starting to shape policies.
The plus side of all of these activities that you've discussed is a terrific opportunity for industry and government to work in partnership with one another here in the U.S. The downside is there's a lot of activity going on here in the U.S. and around the world on different regimes and different frameworks and different structures. And of course, in Europe, it's actual legislation, the AI Act, that has been passed and is going through the trilogue process. And we expect to have that rolled out and completed early next year. Can you talk about how the work that you have described and the ongoing efforts like the voluntary commitments that you spoke to, that 15 companies have signed up for and we've expressed public support for, how does this fit with the work that other countries are doing, the work that even other agencies within government are doing? Of course, you mentioned NIST has the framework discussion. NTIA is doing a rulemaking inquiry within the Commerce Department as well. Other government agencies have spoken about the need to adopt AI rules. And of course, you noted Congress is actively considering legislation. How do you see this all coming together in the hope that countries don't have to require different deployments or different rules as the technology industry obviously operates globally?
Jason, I think that what you are describing really reflects the breadth of this technology. And so I think you should expect that there will be many, many, many different points of engagement. And I find it useful to think both about the core technology itself and then to think about the almost uncountable number of applications and ways that it can be used. And so, just as a sample, the FDA is working on regulations for how AI is used in medical devices, which is exactly what you would want to see. But that's actually very, very different than figuring out where there's bias in housing and algorithmic decision making about who gets a mortgage, right? So the landscape is very, very broad here, and I think that a number of these issues are going to get sorted out at the application layer. And it's the way I think about it, and that has really, I think, the way we've approached this as an administration is to say that the applications are broad. That means the implications and the risks are also broad. And that means we have to keep in focus the full breadth, ranging from issues of fraud and the continued deterioration of our information environment, including, and then going on to safety and security issues, including cybersecurity, biosecurity issues, going on as well to issues of privacy, civil rights, civil liberties, bias, discrimination, all of those issues. And then the whole other category of the impact on jobs and the economy, everything from how is intellectual property going to be treated and valued in this new era, but how will it change work in America, which we know it will, and including in jobs that we never thought were going to get automated. So, I think a lot of people will focus on one or another piece, the thing that they are particularly passionate about, or what they care about, or what they work on. But we're the United States of America. We have to wrestle with all of that together. And that's why you will see a whole host of different organizations. And then I think that the global, both the shaking out of how this really turns out here, but especially around the world as well, this is going to be a process. And I think it is one that will only work with direct engagement of governments and industry and academia and civil society. And I think it's a moment where all of those communities are energized and are stepping up to the table. And it's loud and chaotic and fast moving, but I'm very encouraged by it, because I think that's what we're going to need to get to a place where we see how this is going to go forth in a way that's really constructive for most people.
And your recitation of all of those use cases and all of those potential regulatory engagements is a great explanation as to why a risk-based approach is the one that we've advocated for. And you've talked a lot about, to make sure that the use of AI to help me choose the paint color for my bedroom might not require the same kind of regulatory intervention that the use of AI to decide whether a spot on my lung revealed in an image requires surgery. So it's a great explanation. Yeah.
Yeah. And can I just say about that, Jason, that I think one of the things that makes this, to your point, if you are just developing narrow tools to solve those two seemingly very different problems, it's not that complicated. But when these large language models burst on the scene, starting with OpenAI, Anthropic, now many others, what happened is, I think what blew everyone's minds was how many different ways those large language models, typically in the form of chatbots, how many ways they could be used. And that's the power and the creativity of it. But that is also what makes it, I think, challenging to get your head around. How do we manage those risks?
And so to that point, you in your opening remarks talked about trust and transparency and the need to make sure that consumers feel confident in the technology that's being deployed and how it's being deployed. So I wanted to ask you about your view on transparency in AI systems, and particularly the role of industry there. You ran NIST, which everyone here knows is the premier standards organization within the U.S. government, a terrific organization that does a lot of great work with industry to drive voluntary consensus-driven industry standards. ITI, through our own Insights division, is a standards development organization ourselves, so we're huge supporters of voluntary industry standards. Is there a role in this important element of building public trust in AI? Transparency being a key part of that trust, is there a role for industry to work in the standards arena to help satisfy these concerns?
Absolutely. It won't happen any other way. And again, this is a place where all the parties are going to have to come together. And we've done this, right? We have done this. That's how the voluntary standards community has grown over decades, if not centuries at this point. And I think it's actually very useful to step back and think about what the different roles are. So let's say a word about that. So give me a minute to reflect historically. As a former NIST director, the old National Bureau of Standards was started in 1901, if I have my history correct. And the reason is that we were electrifying the country. And if you couldn't all agree on what 1 volt was, then you couldn't wire the country up. And so it was started around this idea of measurement standards, physical measurement standards that really allowed the entire industrial revolution to blossom. Right? You can't have interchangeable parts if you don't agree on what units of measurement are. that's the classic role of the National Bureau of Standards, which is now the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Well, what does it mean in the information age? And I think we now know, because we've been in the information age for a while, we have some great examples of the way that NIST has worked with industry in areas like natural language processing, which is actually, is part of the feeder community into the AI generation that we're in today. And I think if you look at that, what you see is a critical role that NIST plays in providing standard benchmarks, test methods, test beds, all the technical components that have to be neutral, that have to be rigorous, that have to be meaningful. But those are the technical components around which then industry standards are built. And I think it's very analogous to what happens with physical standards and physical products. And now think about what that means in this very rich new environment of the kind of AI technologies that we have. So where we need to get to is a whole host of industry standards and I'll characterize the theme as standards that tell us when we have safe and effective AI, that it really works for what it's supposed to do and it's safe. That's really what we're all talking about. And I think there's wide agreement that that's what we need to get to. Here's the problem is, when I turn around and I say, where are my tools and methods to tell me when an AI system is safe and effective? We basically have almost nothing. Every company does. I think companies are trying to be responsible, and many of them have developed their own internal processes and benchmarks, but there's nothing approximating a standard capability of tools and methods for safe and effective AI. And I think that is the joint work. It's going to take NIST, it's going to take the industry, it's going to take the academic and the broader research community, because there are practical things we can do today about safe and effective AI. And then there are many, many, many research questions that are going to need to be addressed as the technology grows. So that's how I see it going. But I think we can't do anything else we need to do with AI without building that foundation for safe and effective AI.
And that conformity assessment tool that you're talking about is something that I know we're working on at ITI through our Insights division. I know NIST is working on that as well. And you're absolutely right. If you can't measure it, you can't report on it, and consumers need that. And NIST obviously has that capability and development tools. My son actually is a college student. He interned at NIST this summer in a lab that was doing performance measures for antibody standards. So I know well the great lab work that's there. And I wanted to ask you about that research and innovation support. And I know you led DARPA. If it wasn't for DARPA, we wouldn't have the internet. So I know you have devoted your career to ensuring.
That was not on my watch, just to be clear. I was like 10 years old when that happened. I was not responsible for that.
Just before your time.
A little before my time.
But I know the Biden administration is focused heavily on the kind of use cases for AI that are so important to the U.S. economy and to society. More accurate cancer screenings, climate challenge addresses through AI, and obviously research and development are incredibly important to this. So I wanted to ask you about the administration's efforts and in partnership with Congress to support and fund research and innovation to make sure that the U.S. maintains its competitive edge in AI technology.
This is vitally important, and there's a lot going on with AI across federally funded R&D, exactly as you would expect. But specifically to this point about the critically important compute resources and the data resources that are needed to build really interesting, powerful new models. There's an effort that started with a congressional language now, I think a couple of years ago, that led to a task force that focused on this question of what would a national AI research resource look like, something for academic use, for focusing on building AI for public purposes. And that very much includes this focus on safe and effective AI that we just talked about. That started then some congressional language a little while ago. A task force came out with some recommendations, specifically recommendations about an investment in a national AI research resource. And we've been thrilled to see Congress turn that into some draft legislation. So a bill's been drafted. And I think that is a great opportunity to augment the work that's happening, of course, in industry, very powerful work there, but also the work that's happening across the federal R&D base today that's using AI. This, I think, is an important additional component.
We have a Office of the National Cyber Director that's pretty new in the administration. And obviously, cybersecurity is an important area of focus and an area that you have had a lot of experience in your career as well. I wanted to ask you about AI and cybersecurity. We know that AI is enormously helpful to the way organizations, public sector and private sector, are approaching cybersecurity, but there are also some challenges, obviously, that the advent of AI creates because it's a new tool for cyber criminals as well. So I wanted to ask you, based on your experience in national security, how the administration is approaching AI's potential for cybersecurity purposes, while we still need to, of course, invest in security innovation to counter adversarial AI at the same time.
This is one of the most classic examples of the bright and dark side that come when you empower any area with these advances in AI. And of course, the same tools that allow a bad actor to identify cyber vulnerabilities are going to be the same tools you need to identify those vulnerabilities so that you can deal with them before someone gets to them. And that's actually a great example of that is a new significant prize challenge that DARPA just launched, the AI Cyber Challenge. And it's specifically about using AI tools to go find cyber vulnerabilities in the real world with prizes for people who can, who do the most and the best of that. And I think it's a great example of DARPA taking this technology and outrunning the dark side by just putting the resources and really energizing people to go use it to make us more cyber secure.
And the last thing, because we're almost out of time, that I wanted to ask you about is what we should be paying attention to in industry, and what is your call to us to participate in, to engage in, to be helpful to your efforts? You mentioned some global venues that are active in discussion. We may have, although we haven't seen this publicly released, although you're welcome to make news now, the EU-US Trade and Technology Council, which may be coming up soon. I think it's the US's turn to host. So that's a venue, obviously, that has discussed AI policy and coordination between the EU and the US. And we talked about the OECD, the G7, a lot of initiatives. Where do you want to see industry paying attention here in the US and around the world? And what's your request to us to be most helpful to you as you move all of these important issues forward?
Yeah, on TTC, Secretary Raimondo is driving that, and I know that's one of the fora where AI is really front and center. The short answer to your question, Jason, is everywhere, because there are, again, the breadth of this technology means that it is everywhere around the globe. It is in it's hard to think of an application domain that's not going to be affected by the potential of AI. And the work that needs to be done is work that we're going to need to do in partnership. And, look, this is how we do big things together in this country. Every huge advance that we have ever had that shaped our world came because industry and government and academia and civil society all came together and wrestled with each other and argued and figured out how to move forward. And that, I think we're just at a marvelous moment. And a lot of the excitement and all the screaming and shouting and people waving and even arguing, it's really constructive because this is how we're going to chart a course. And so I really appreciate the partnership, and we'll continue to work with companies and industries broadly.
Well, we appreciate the partnership as well, and we appreciate your leadership that is helping make all of this partnership possible and helping bring the U.S. into the AI future that we all anticipate and eagerly await. And although we've reached the end of our conversation today, it's certainly not the end of our conversation about AI. We'll continue to track and participate in all of the discussions we've talked about today. ITI is working alongside the administration and Congress and industry experts, and we look forward to our continued partnership. I want to thank you, Director Prabhakar, for joining us today. We really appreciate your sharing time, knowledge, information, insight with us, and it's a pleasure having you. Thanks so much, Jason. Thanks for having me. And thank you to all of you in the audience for joining us today. Be sure to follow ITI on Twitter at ITI_TechTweets. Oh, it's not Twitter anymore, is it? Sorry. Follow us on your chosen platform for social media engagement. Also find us on LinkedIn to stay connected, and visit us at bridgeforinnovation.org to learn more about this and other upcoming events.